Hey there, I'm Lily, and it's been a while. I know it's really been a while, and I have a more full update video coming out next Tuesday, which is a very special day for the channel, but I apologize for being away. Times are weird. Yeah, they're weird, but not talking about that right now. And today, I thought I'd just hop back into things, which actually should be new things, and this should be a consistent thing that I do, making videos like I supposedly do on a regular basis. But kind of talking about what I've actually, not to talk about what I've been doing in the last few months, but actually just showing it off. A lot of what I've been working on has been Librarian Idyll, this game I've been working on. I've mentioned I've done a few videos on different aspects of it in the past, but today I figured I would do a kind of walkthrough of the versions as it's evolved over time, and just kind of show off what's been going on and how it's been progressing. So, actual full programming really started at the beginning of this year, so we're almost 9 months underway of the actual programming of it. We've been developing it since December of 2019, so it's about 10 months underline. There's a core team of about 4 of us that have really been working on it. I've been the main programmer, and then we have a couple people working on writing, and then Bucket, who's been doing the music, and the music is sounding fantastic for the game. It's actually not in-game yet. There's actually no sounds in-game currently, but we're just kind of slowly working towards a prototype. For the most part, it is just me doing a lot of the programming. A lot of what wanting to be showing off is my end of things, but things are progressing slowly, but we're really happy with how it's going. So for those of you who haven't seen any of the prior videos, this is an indie game that I'm developing with a small team. It's called Librarian Idyll. It is a kind of community simulation game about building and running a magical library. You are a bibliomancer who's been sent off to the far-off town of Lakeshore to run their library. You just graduated from the Council of Bibliomancy's schools, and this is your first assignment. When you reach town, you find the library's been burned down mysteriously, and it's your job to go in there and fix everything up. And so that is kind of the general premise of the game. And without further ado, let's just start hopping into it. So the first version of the game that I have available, because when I started putting internal builds that people in the group could play, it was 1.2.6. And so the first few versions of the game, so 1.0 and 1.1, I don't actually have a version for. I could roll back on the version, the cloud version protection of thing, but I didn't want to do that. That's a lot more effort than I was going to poke at. So the first version we're getting is 1.2.6. But in the first few versions, pre-alpha 2.1.0, generally the version structure as it goes is all these are pre-alpha because we're still in pre-alpha stage. And each version has kind of just these larger groups, and then I usually update in the 3.0.n. The N is usually my nightly updates, or sometimes multiple nightly or whatnot. And then I will sometimes have a letter on it if it's just I published this and realized something was wrong. I do a revision. So our third one we're looking at is 1.3.9a. But 1.0 was just first steps. And this was essentially just getting down some basic stuff. Okay, you can move around, there's an endless green void, there's time management, time passes, and there's a clock, and just some very basic things. And there's some just working out a lot of data structures, so there wasn't much going on. 1.1 added the main menu, which was essentially just have that and let the game be saved, which really means that we bring up at 1.2, which is the inventory system. And as we come up here, this is the earliest that we have the game. So here's the menu back in 1.2. It's kind of thing. You can continue load games. I'm not going to be loading these games because these are my current test saves in the current version, which we are currently on 2.6.1, pre-alpha 2.6.1, and these won't properly load if we load them up. So let's just pop one new one. In the game there, in the world, we've noticed there are 3 primary genders within the culture there. I'm not going to really get into that today because this is more of a technical show-off. I'll probably do more videos about lore and role building and things like that. Is this what you got? You have this purple friend with this jitter thing. This is a bug that won't be fixed for a little while. But essentially there is an issue where it's not... You can, when you shove things that have physics animation, and movement is a physics animation, different things have different priorities, and by default it has the lower priority. But things like the player and other things that the player will see a lot, you want to have the top priority. So essentially what's happening is it's trying to predict where it's going to be, and then it corrects itself, and it happens too late, and that's why you get this jittery. So this was halfway through implementing the inventory system, where we could press I. You can't press E yet, which is primitive. You should press I, which is a bit unfortunate. There's some debug buttons here to give yourself books and stuff like that. So you can give yourself some books and, hey, look, the books have, like, the descriptions and stuff. And throughout this whole thing, I've been writing books, and I've done a few videos on that. And, yeah, no, they're books. Because it's a game about library, and a lot of those be collecting books and stuff like that. So these are cool. You can go here, you can say, hey, we want to pass time to the evening if you wanted to skip to the evening, or you can go to night. There's this mention this thing called an evening activity. You'll see that language go away a little bit because just kind of, I thought I was going to be implementing them sooner than they have. It's something we're planning on doing, which is kind of like, if as an incentive, like in the day a little bit early, where if you can get to bed between like 6 and 9, you can begin an evening activity, which is just kind of an abstraction of time, because in these sort of games, like doing things like having dinner with someone, or these more complex things, or spending the evening studying, or things like that, that don't really have a gameplay function for you to go and do, but to be able to incorporate those things and have bonuses and whatnot for doing those things and spending your time. So your time in the evening is a resource, or you could just also just not do any evening activity and just spend it doing normal gameplay. But that's generally everything that is available. Like, there's not much else. Everything here, it's like the inventory, that's pretty much everything, and then a button that closes the game. And if we go up to 2.9, and we just click a new story because we didn't save one. Hey, look, we now add stone, which was a debug item that let us deal with stacks, so you can deal with stacks now, which is a new thing. One thing that I actually didn't highlight is this is called a dialogue event. This is a structure I made very early, and the game makes heavy use of them, so anytime an NPC talks to you or something like that, it is just in a dialogue event. And these are generated just from plain text. Because one thing that I've gone into this, not so much, it's a basic markup, but very readable text, the config files, but one of the things that I've approached this game is that almost any content I create, I want to be able to have to be natively moddable. So it's very much trying to just making the game as moddable as possible, and for both the ease of my adding content to it, because if I have a nice modding API, it makes adding actual official vanilla content that much easier. But also just doing that. But otherwise, this is still 1.2, so this whole thing was the inventory system. From here on out, I'm only going to be showing you, like, at this point of the game, I was putting under like an internal build every week, but I've since shifted to being like, I put out an internal build at the end of each version. So that's there, and not much going on there. So the next one is 1.3. 1.3 didn't add that much functionality, but it essentially added a bunch of new things. So you have the inventory thing, now you have the Bibliomancer menu, which is kind of just this bulk, like, okay, here's some information. Eventually this is going to be kind of like a player stats version where you can check the stats of your player and whatnot. Honestly, at this point, this is going to be completely reworked. Like, this is just all dummy text and whatnot, but I just added the net menu. But a lot of this update was just a lot of the back-end technical framework, where for every feature you see on the front end, especially in these versions, there's a ton going on the back end to clean everything up and make sure all this is handled well. There's also now a settings menu, which there are not currently any settings to run. And now you can finally actually exit back to the main menu, which is something you couldn't do before. And you could say, go back here. And yeah, so that was something that this did. Also, there's a sort button in the inventory. I don't think I showed that off last time. But also you'll notice that the give book icons didn't here, because I properly implemented a dev console. So if I wanted to say, hey, give me 5 books, it'll give me 5 books. And you can put down here the sort button. In a past video, I did talk about the comp categorization system, and that is actually implemented at this point, where if you sort them, it'll sort them by their cob index. So this is obviously a Bibliomancy book, which is the fourth of the cob classes, and which after that comes literature, religion, and history. In the order, because it follows the divine procession, which is more world building stuff, which I'm not getting into. But books properly sort properly by their cob index. And that's generally what I did in 1.3. 1.4 has very little like on the front end, because 1.4 was going back and adding a localization system. Right off the bat, you might notice though that there's fonts now. Ooh, it's not just generic Arial. Oops, I didn't wait for the thing to load. But you might notice there's fonts now, so it's not just generic Arial and whatnot. There's now a settings menu on the main menu. Woo! And you can switch language, but there's only English. But essentially just added in a localization system for a few reasons. One, if I ever do want to, because it's like at this point, we're not likely going to translate this game at any point. But if we do in the future, we would want that. We want to have it available if, say, we want to make this game as multiple as possible. If someone wanted to make a translation, they could. And see, it just makes it a lot easier to... It just makes the code a lot cleaner with everything is not referring to actual text and just referring to localization keys. It makes keeping track of what text is in the game very easy, and it keeps all that data in one place. But generally though, in the actual game, not much changed. I mean, obviously the localization is being used in the actual things. If you're to say like add book, I mean not dev console, but who cares about dev console? Okay, that's cool, that's nice, and it's fancy nice. One thing also they didn't show is that you can actually drop items on the ground. You could do this actually a while ago. But yeah, and you can pick them back up and whatnot. Yeah. And in all these updates, there were always like more books being added, more like the cob system being expanded. You don't really see that as much, but that is still going on in the background, and more data is being added. And in the background of all the programming and actual progress, there's a lot more writing and planning and design work going on that isn't making it here. So back in the very beginning, 1.0, the first version that we showed was mid-February, and now we're into March. And then there was a very big one, and this leads us to 1.5. This is the last version of Pre-Alpha 1.x, and this was the big one that deals with scene and zone management, where until now we had been just kind of wandering in an empty void, and now we're not. So one thing is like, there's still that here, but hey, there is this, I don't know, general floor plan of a place that you can go to. But now if you go out here, you can walk outside. And okay, yeah, there's still a lot of stuff out and about, and there's some green void, and there's still an endless green void, but the structure to move between a zone is now in place at this point. And yeah, it's a little fidgety and some stuff goes on, but hey, it's there. And it works and it works and whatnot. And this was a huge point forward. And after this, I declared 1.x done, and this is the first version of it. So at the end of 1.x, you can move between zones. There was a menu. You can do. There's all those inventory tools that you've done, and it was coming along. But up to this point, it was a lot of just very much background, base level stuff that you had to do to make the game, functional. But it wasn't really much content. There's still not much to do. And 1.0 didn't have a clear goal. It was just kind of like get stuff down, get stuff going, make things work, get these base systems down. 3.2.x actually has a concrete goal, and that goal is the goal of 2.x is to get to the point where the main concept of the game is working, where you arrive at the town, there's a burnt down library. You can build the library. You can then get the library set up to the point where you can get books for it and put books into the library and add to the library's collection, which is the core part of it, is that you build the library and you expand the library's collections. And once you can do that, we'll call 2.x done. But there's a lot to go to actually get there. This is 2.0. Firing up now is 2.0.8. This was released on the 21st of June, and we have here. Okay, here we are. So you'll notice that we've actually got a facelift on a lot of stuff. There was a humble bundle of just a bunch of game assets, like licenses and whatnot, and these, I shall say, nothing here is finalized assets. It is purely get it down, make it work. So one thing you might see is that, okay, so now, hey, look, there's this whole internal, hey, look, the zones look nicer, and the version of 2.0, it was to essentially clean everything up and make things look a bit better, in terms of actual kind of finalization. And hey, look, the walls in this place have collision now, and you can't leave properly, and also notice now that, hey, if you bump into the desk, it doesn't fire the dialogue event anymore. Now, hey, look, there's a tooltip feedback. Now if you click on it, it'll give you the event. So this hover thing was supposed to be this small footnote in this version, ended up being half the version was getting this to work. Even things a lot of things, not everything's gotten into Facelift yet in terms of its setting. Quick look, add book. I've inconsistently improved things, but now, hey, look, there's this exterior zone, and hey, there's the library. But now you can go back in and you can click on things. It used to be in current version left click interacts with that. Currently it's a right click, and I just inverse the functionality of use item and that. So that's something that's been inversed in there. And hey, look, there's a basic library zone that you can go into. And if you'll notice, hey, you can't stare into the void anymore. The camera properly has bounds in the zone, and you can't leave. You don't see into the void, and you can't actually go down here. There's no zone defined down there. But generally, hey, this is actually functioning now, and it's looking more like this is something you would use, and you go back and forth. And this was just kind of mechanically this isn't actually that much, but it does so much just for the feel of the game, that it isn't just okay, we're wandering into default Unity space. This is actually a world that we're developing, very crude, but we're getting there. 2.1 added the concept of NPCs. mean, obviously there's going to be very many characters in the game. Yeah. Also, you'll notice until this point, in terms of load, sorry, you only save when you go to sleep. This technically helps not having to save where you are. You can't save in the middle of the day. A lot of games utilize this where you can only save at the end of a day. But it just makes the save files and what you actually have to store in terms of data super easy. So we haven't been making new saves, which is good because we can't actually delete them at this point. And if we just go, hey, we're still a team. And here we are. I still haven't upgraded that. But hey, look, there are now people in the world. And this is a debug carpenter, a debug shopkeeper. And inside, you got a debug person. And hey, they have something called a greeting. So the first time you talk to someone every day, they will give you a randomized greeting event. You can talk and like, hey, like this one has conversation that you can strike up. This one doesn't have anything you can do, and these are taglines. They'll give dialogue, and they're loaded, and yeah, they do cool things. But they are in the world. They can have menus, and that kind of stuff happens, and yeah. But kind of just like, again, this is like a lot of back-end stuff to make them work, and there's not that much to show for it at this point, but making sure the greeting like works and making sure that all that architecture works too, so it's the point that we only have to go forward. This is 2.2.7, I believe. I don't remember 2.2.7. This is 2.2.7. You see the main menu, got a facelift. Again, very temporary. Like, eventually this new story thing is actually going to be a whole, like, very nice, like, okay, actually, we'll tell the story of everything going up here, and, we have a really cool idea of kind of, like, how we're going to do this. But you'll notice, like, hey, look at all this, we got that going up. This one was just kind of a update to add a bunch of stuff. So if we talk to you, the carpenter doesn't do much yet. But now, hey, the shopkeeper can give us some supplies and be like, hey, look, there's some supplies. There's some debug items that we're going to be using that, and they now have fancy tooltips, and it looks nice, and the items have value, and I'll show you how much items that the value is. There's now item rarity, and all that. And it's really just kind of showing off that. And if you see like, oh, fittings here, this is a bug that wasn't fixed yet. If you notice that the font on the number when it's a ghost hasn't fixed yet, I fixed that in a later version. If you can go to this guy, you can talk to books and get some books. So you can actually get the items in the game without actually having to go to a dev console now. Dialogue events are all like that. And overall, just kind of 2.2 was just kind of like, okay, let's add some extra functionality to items that we're going to need later. This is kind of like it doesn't really go on the direct, it was more of a prerequisite for other things that will be needed to build a library. But it's needed. I mean, we need the NPCs to be able to talk to the carpenter to build the library. You need to talk to the shopkeeper to get the supplies to build the library. You'll need to talk to a bookseller to get the books to put them into the library. Granted, that won't be for most of these resources, eventually down the road, you'll gather these in the world. Books you'll get from all sorts of situations, not just a bookseller. But in terms of the easiest way to get to the point where you'll just go to these people and they'll have proper shops. So that was 2.2. Then we moved on to 2.3, which is triggered events. Triggered events, this version actually doesn't add that much at all. Ooh, I just clicked, let's go to the main menu. I'm used to just clicking continue story because that's what I do when I'm testing stuff. Right here. And now you'll notice like, hey look, there's some smoother transitions between zones and things like that. But this whole version was something called triggered events, which are this very back-end process which lets us have automated events just in the config files for like things we've used to like spawn things like cutscenes and things like that. I was going to use them for the construction of the library, and then I ended up not using it for the construction library. So currently almost nothing in 2.3 besides like the scene transitions actually have been used in the game. It's one of those things where it's like, I will use these eventually, but I didn't actually end up using them for the thing I thought I would, which is kind of annoying. But what do you do? I don't know. I'm gonna go cry now. Not much to show in 2.3. 2.4 though was Al is actually really starting to show the actual getting to the goal of 2.x. So you can go in here, and you go in here, and hey look, the NPCs have been replaced. These are actually some of the actual NPCs that will be in the game. You got Tail, Southmere, who will tell you stuff. And you got, thing. But you'll notice now that, like, hey, look, the library's been burned down. The library no longer starts constructed, because now you can actually construct the library. If you go to Tail, you can go to the construction menu. It's like, hey, here are the construction projects currently available to you. You can build a basic library, which requires 500 gold, which is not currently implemented because I haven't actually implemented shops, so it's just free. You can ignore that gold cost altogether. Also, I don't know if it's going to be called gold. We haven't really decided what the currency cost is going to be. It's probably 500, like, currency symbol. But, hey, it'll take 2 days to complete, and I'll do some stuff. And we need some basic stuff. But who can we go there? We can Dr. Rhea. She runs Elk's Shore Stock and Trade, who won't be here. Like, both of these people eventually won't be standing outside the home. They will be in town, which will be to the south and whatnot. For the time being, they're here. And I can go here and be like, hey, we would like to begin the basic library. Are you sure you want to begin the basic library? Yes. Yes, I'll be ready in 2 days. Sweet. So now go to bed. And if we just want to go to bed, boop, boop. It's the first time we've actually gone to bed, and it's now the next day, and it has also saved the game. And now if we go today, now that's 2 days later, we can talk here, and like, hey, the library has now been constructed. You can go in. I didn't mean for Cecil to accidentally look, which is the bookseller, to look like he's a nerd cosplaying Luke Skywalker, but after I made his placeholder sprite, I was like, oh shoot, he just looks like a nerd cosplaying Luke Skywalker. But yeah, so you can talk to Cecil, and he can give you books like he did before, and it's, but yeah, so the NPCs are there, you can actually build the library now, and like, hey, that's something starting to resemble gameplay. Just slowly ever getting closer to a game, and that's 2.4. In the last version that was released, which was 2.5, which I released on the 18th, which was like a few days ago from recording, this is 2.5.12a. 2.5 was about NPC progression. This is one that actually wasn't necessary for actually let us go back to the this one wasn't actually necessary for the main goal, which is building the library, but was actually implemented to for the purpose of we actually had some stuff that we wanted to implement on the NPCs, and for in terms of like some new greetings and whatnot that could give you, but there were some things that we needed to implement. We needed to make sure that, okay, unique greetings that only happened once was actually function properly and things like that, and they weren't yet, so we had to add those in. So this one has a few things. One, for the first thing, there's now the social menu, which is obviously very placeholder and whatnot, and you can't actually see anyone because we haven't met anyone on the save yet. Just going to say hi to Tail, who all these people now have introductory greetings and whatnot, and you can just be like, oh, I don't like you, and like, hey, look, it's cool. And now when you like go to our social menu, hey, look, we've met Tail. They're a stranger to us. And also like, oh, hey, there's this new person, and yeah, I'm Diana. You know Daryl? Yeah, that's cool. And there's some lore stuff talking about that. And you can look at fittings and stuff and whatnot. but essentially having that, and like you can actually gain opinion and lose opinion. Like if we say like, hey, change opinion Rhea 500, you look in there, hey, Rhea is now considered to be a contact for us rather than a stranger. And if we were to do that again, like say to be 250, they're now our friend. So they have this ability to get that, and that affects different things. Like it determines like how, different dialogue you can get for them. Those determine like cutscenes and services available, and shops will improve prices and whatnot, and that sort of thing. And that's kind of what it's been going on here. And apart from the few updates in 2.6 have been going underway, this is the game so far. It's one of those things where it's come a long way, but it has so much farther it needs to go. But it's been really neat watching this come along and actually develop and coming along, and because I've been spending a lot of time on this, but I'm really happy with how it's going, and we have lots of cool things planned. Like the social menu that we have working on, and the concept that we have for is essentially all the families and the because Lakeshore is based around these like a few main families, and all the menus are to be redone as the Bibliomancer's Journal. And the social menu will actually be a series of pages that focus on each family, and then a page for people who are a part of any of the families. That will have it'll start as just kind of like a rough sketch of each character as you meet them, and as you get to know them better, it kind of fleshes out into like a full portrait of each family, and then you can click on each person to actually go into the in-depth information of like, hey, who is this person, like what do they like, what are notes on their stories, what quests have you done for them or whatnot. And that's gonna be really cool, and I'm really excited about that. But you just can't see that yet because right now the focus has been, okay, let's get things functional. So everything is super placeholder. This isn't anything what it's gonna look like, but it's coming along, and I'm really happy with how it's all going. Yeah, we move that over there, and but yeah, no, it's going really well, and I'm super excited with how it's been going. So on the rest of 2.6, like we've planned is currently, or the rest of 2.x, I should say, 2.6 is the current one where we're getting furniture placed down, so we'll actually decorate the library and whatnot. 2.7 is going to be a bunch of stuff to improve inventories. That's a lot of back-end stuff, but also implementing things like chests and inventories you can have in the world, and shelves and whatnot. Then implementing shops, so you actually have to buy the books and the materials. And then this idea of library modules will be implemented, which is kind of the idea that the library has, the layout of the library is more or less kind of static just for technology limitations. But the actual internal areas of the library are actually divided in these modules, which are these areas that you define what they are for themselves, where think of them as rooms, but not all of them are in a private room. So you might have some of the early ones are okay, you have an administration desk, and this is the first module you'll build, and that's what you use to add books to the library and get general information on the library, and or also people leave money if they make donations to the library and things like that. So it's kind of like the logistical hub of it. And you also might have a lounge. The collections themselves are their own modules, and later on when you actually get your nice in the upper floors, you'll get your own your residence. You'll have the different residential modules where it's okay, your kitchen, your bathrooms and things like that, and actually have those. And all these modules have different effects on the library and give you access to other new things. But they're defined by what furniture you put them in. So it's to make the admin library work, you'll need to actually have at least at the very minimum, you need to have a desk and a chair. But for the higher level ones of them, you might need a certain number of cabinets and things like that, or things. Or you might need a specific decoration value, and so all the modules have different tiers you can upgrade for them. So you can both just kind of giving that reason to actually want to bring in and actually decorate the library and fill it out instead of just finding books, put books in, and there's actual reason to find these things besides the generic like making it look good, but actually having to have a mechanical feeling and getting that modules working. That's 2.9, and then 2.10 is the actual final goal of adding books, which is going to be really exciting, and actually when it's actually a game. And once we have that, we have our core loop done, and then it's just like everything else we can just do pointing back to that and adding it on and making all that work, and it's going to be super exciting, and I'm super happy about it. And then after 2, and then beyond that, we have our roadmap to alpha, which is 3.x is going to be just about fleshing out the world, getting like at least like the core maps area, so there's places to put things, so it's not, everything's not crammed into a forest. Then 4.x is all about implementing crafting and all the different systems involved with crafting. 5.x is going to be resource gathering, which is kind of the idea of like, okay, this world is populated by things, to be able to do things like gather like wood or get some ores, or get those initial ways to get those resources, start building library and whatnot. The 6.x is going to be like the skill and progression system, which I'm super excited. We've spent a lot of time designing this, and it's nice and it's neat, and I'm really excited about it because there's not that many games that use this kind of system. I'm super excited for that. And then there's just a laundry list of miscellaneous stuff as we kind of just get things going and get ready to get to that alpha state when we can call this, hey, we're out of pre-alpha now, we're actually in an alpha state. So yeah, so I'm super excited by all of this, and yeah, so this is what I've been working on. I mean, it's a lot. I mean, I know I haven't been around, and I'm going to be around more, but I have not been idle. But yeah, so, I mean, as always, let me know if you have any questions. Like, it's also one of those things where it's like, hey, if you're interested and want to help out, please let me know. Like, hop onto the channel Discord below and just poke me and be like, hey, I want to help out with X or Y or Z or whatnot. Because we're still in the stages where we still welcome anyone who wants to help out with this, and yeah, we're seeing where it's going, so we don't really know where it's going ultimately. We're not really thinking about that until we get to the point where it's like, okay, like currently we're just kind of all just doing this for fun, for it's just kind of like, hey, we're doing this because we enjoy doing it, and also just it's also good for like portfolio stuff. We're gonna see if like, hey, is there actually a lot of interest for us to, like, once we're at like an alpha state, kind of sit down and be like, is there enough interest for us to actually start really seriously developing this like professionally to like actually like make into a published game, which would be nice, but we're kind of waiting till we have that prototype before we even start thinking about that. But yeah, so that's what we've been working on, and I don't know, I'm just rambling now. I've missed this a lot. It's been a weird year. Well, that's enough of me rambling and whatnot, and all have been safe and healthy, and I missed y'all. Well, as always, may your story smile upon you.